Welcome to Epithets, exploring the sacred titles of Hekate.
Hey everyone, it's your hosts, Isaac Vars and Robin Silverman. Say hi, Robin.
Hello.
And we are here today to talk about Hekate Einalia. And as we do with every episode, we are going to start. Oh, I'm going to preface this. I know that we said that we were going to be doing Crocopeplos, but that fell through for now. So instead, we're going to be kind of tackling the three epithets of Hesiod's theogony with Einalian, Chthonian, and Iranian. And today we're going to start with what might be arguably one of the more trickier ones with Einalian. We were both talking about how we're going to be a little more creative in some of the ancient work. As I was doing research for this myself, I found a lot of articles from people's personal experiences, which wasn't what I was looking for. I didn't that if we want to talk about personal experiences, Robin and I can go there and probably will today. But I'm kind of getting ahead of everything. Robin, what does Analian or Analia mean?
It means of the ocean or of the sea. It's a word that's used in a lot of different contexts, not just for Hecate. It gets used as an epithet of Poseidon, of Aphrodite, and of course, the Greeks lived very close to the sea, and so Enalian is a word that comes up in a lot of different contexts. But in this case, for Hecate, it's Hecate of the sea, and we get it applied to Hecate actually in the Orphic hymn to Hecate as well. You mentioned Hesiod as well. But like in the I think it's the second line. Yeah, it's the second line. Oranian, Chthonian, Takai, Enalian, of the heavens, of the earth, and of the sea. And so today, of course, we're talking about the last one in that triad, Enalian.
Yeah. Oh, that even hearing that little bit when we do our Deipnon new moon ritual here in Littleton, we have a call and response with the Greek. And I know Robin has been there before she moved south. She was at our I think the first one we did,
Yeah,
which was now a while ago. And even thinking about the opening of that, calling her by heavenly, earthly, and in the sea, it just sends chills up my spine. I love it.
yeah,
But there's something very powerful there. But I think maybe I'll start with what I found
sure.
because it talks about before Hekate, and your stuff kind of talks about after Hekate.
Hmm.
Robin and I, before the episode, we were kind of figuring out what each one of us had found. And we were both talking about how it was not quite about her. It's all a little bit of a stretch, still close enough that we felt comfortable to bring it to the podcast. But I kind of went in Hekate's past or pre-Hekate, where Robin kind of went post-Hekate. So it worked out really well. And what I was looking at, a lot of what I have was taken out of the Circles for Hekate by Sarita Deste. And it was talking about not so much Hekate, but her mother. According to Hesiod in the Theogony and a few other places, Hecate's mother is listed as Asteria, the goddess of stars, starry sky. And her name means star, right,
Yeah,
Robin?
yeah,
Yeah. I'm getting a nod. And there's a lot of interesting oceanic connections to Asteria. There are theories that Asteria was conflated or came from the goddess Brizo, whose name means slumber, on the ancient island of Delos. And she was connected to both the dream oracles. People would make offerings, or women on the island would make offerings to her to protect their husbands out at sea. They would make these boat-shaped kind of vessels, fill them with offerings, except a whole bunch of things except for fish, because fish, you don't want to take an offering from the sea and then give it back to the sea. That doesn't make sense. And that to protect ships. There's also the story that Delos was actually created by Asteria fleeing Zeus when Zeus was trying to woo her. So Pliny the Elder refers to Delos having all these older names, and each of these older names listed, about 75% of them are really Hecatean, which is really interesting. Uh, One of the names, let's see, I wrote here Cynthia, which was a moon goddess, Asteria, star, connected to her, Sinethys, dog, which is really interesting, Pyrrhopyle, which is fiery. Pliny was claiming that fire was first discovered there, but also Pliny says a lot of things. I feel like Pliny is never the best. Pliny the Elder is not the best source of ancient world stuff because he's pretty sus to me, but I'm not going to get into that. But one of the things that it mentions is Ortygia whale, which is the name of the island that was supposed to form from Asteria when she was fleeing Zeus. People argue about which island they were talking about specifically, but Asteria, we're assuming after she had Hekate, fleeing Zeus because Zeus was doing what Zeus does. She decides she'd rather be an island in the ocean than be a mistress of Zeus, turns herself into a quail, throws herself into the ocean, turns into an island, myth logic, and instead Zeus goes after Leto, which is where we get Artemis and Apollo. And of course, Hera's not very happy with this. And what was it? Oh gosh, I didn't write this in my notes, but she curses Leto that she cannot land essentially to have these babies. And Apollo in the womb guides her to the island that was Asteria. And Asteria says, no, you can have no sister, you can have your babies here. And that's fine. And Hera forgives everybody because Asteria, quote unquote, chose the ocean over Zeus. And she's like, okay, well, I get it. You literally sacrificed yourself so my husband couldn't be inappropriate with you. Uh, Anyway, so that's a long, winding trail to link Hecate to the ocean. But also, if you want to look at her lineage, her great grandparents, again, all the rest of us have more great grandparents than this, but the gods and goddesses of the Greek world were a little incestuous. Her great grandparents are Gaia, who is the earth, Uranus, which is the heavens, and Pontus, which is the sea, the three primordial gods of the land, sea, and sky, which are the three realms that Hecate has not dominion and rulership over. And that was kind of what I had from her past to loosely link her to the ocean. What do you have for other parts of Hecate and myth, Robin?
Well, I wanted to talk a little bit about Hesiod, and I feel like we've gone over this passage a whole lot in this podcast, but there's a reason for that. When Hesiod talks about Hecate, he does specifically mention, where Zeus gave her splendid gifts to have a share of the earth and the unfruitful sea. I was kind of intrigued by that word unfruitful, so I had to look it up. And the Greek word for unfruitful is atrugatos. And atrugatos is kind of a funny word. I was curious because I was wondering if the unfruitful sea was like a specific type of sea, that maybe she was just getting the part that was unfruitful, but that actually doesn't look like it's true because it's actually a pretty common Homeric epithet for the sea, to call it atrugatos. And that's traditionally translated as unfruitful or barren or something like that. But there's other kind of linguistic theories about it, that it means something more like restless or untiring, the sea that is constantly moving. And to me, that makes a lot more sense than calling it barren or unfruitful, considering how much we get from the sea. So I am kind of inclined to agree with those linguists who think it might mean something more like restless, even though traditionally it's always been translated as barren, or as the translation I have of Hesiod calls it unfruitful. but I think it's more this idea of restlessness. It's always moving. It never stops moving. But in any case, Zeus gives her dominion over the sky, sea, and land, just as, we've mentioned with her great-grandparents, and as the Orphic hymn mentions. So it goes on to say, the son of Cronos did her no wrong, nor took anything away of all that was her portion among the former Titan gods, but she holds, as the division was at the first from the beginning, privilege both in earth and in heaven and in the sea. And then later he goes on to talk about, let's see, she is good to stand by horsemen when she will, and to those whose business is in the gray, discomfortable sea, and who pray to Hekate in the loud, crashing earth shaker, that meaning Poseidon. Easily the glorious goddess gives great catch, and easily she takes it away as soon as seen, if so she will. So she has this power with fishermen to either provide a catch or not, depending on how she feels about it. But yeah, to those whose business is in the great discomfortable sea implies people who are sailing out in boats, right? People who make their living from the sea, people who depend on the sea. And that she has, and that she's the one to call on if you need to catch some fish, or you have some other kind of business with the sea. There's also this association. There's a particular fish, the red mullet, which is one of the traditional offerings for Hecate. And the red mullet, I was looking it up. It's this interesting little fish that is, as the name would suggest, it turns bright red once it's killed. So it can look, it is as an offering for Hecate, it looks kind of bloody. So you have this like red Hecatean intense kind of color to this fish, which also supposedly was also quite delicious. So now I kind of want to hunt some down and try it. I have to check the fishmonger one of these days to try some red mullet. But it was one of the traditional offerings for Hecate, was the red mullet.
What that really brings to my attention, as you were saying that, I was thinking about how interesting it is to mention praying to Hecate instead of Poseidon, right?
Yeah.
But it was talk her as this liminal connective deity. It's almost like she is, yes, Poseidon rules over the ocean, but she has this rulership over our relationship with the ocean.
Yes.
Our connection to the ocean, because it's talking to her and help us in our relationship with the ocean, not necessarily, the ocean itself, but harvesting from the ocean, working with the ocean, how we relate to the ocean.
Yes.
She is that in between, which is really, really Hecatean and makes so much sense to me. I don't know. That's really fascinating. But you had also mentioned that you wanted to talk a little bit about her relationship to the mother of monsters.
Yes. Well, she's definitely the mother of Hecate is the mother of monsters. Hecate is also specifically the mother to the monster called Scylla, who I think anybody who's read the Odyssey would remember as being part of the duo of Scylla and Charybdis, where they're for those who aren't, there's a point in the Odyssey where Odysseus has to sail between two dangers, right? This is a narrow strait. And on one side is Charybdis, which is this monster that creates this sort of sucking whirlpool that'll bring your ship down. And on the other side is this rock where Scylla lives, and Scylla will swoop down and will pluck away your sailors off your boat. And so Odysseus he decides to go closer to Scylla because it's better to lose a few sailors than to have your whole boat sink. But traditionally, Hecate is the mother of Scylla. And Scylla, I think, is sort of interesting because Scylla is associated with the ocean in this way, and that she, feeds on sailors and she lives by the sea, but she perches on a rock and she flies. So she's got like all three of those aspects of the sky and the earth and the sea. So she's another one of these very Hecatean monsters. And she's depicted in a couple of different ways, but she's often depicted as this sort of snaky being, which, as we talked about when we talked about Draconis, um, that these sort of snaky, multi-headed beings are often associated with Hecate. So Scylla is another one of those. But she is associated with the sea in the sense that, she's always talked about in kind of sailor tales, right? Like the Odysseus, like the Odyssey, where she's associated with danger to sailors. And yeah, Hecate is in a lot of versions, of course, nothing's ever consistent, but in a lot of versions of the stories, Hecate is specifically the mother of Scylla.
It is interesting. We were kind of talking about this a little bit before the podcast started. The the more metaphorical connections to Hecate and the ocean, going perhaps a little beyond the bounds of traditional myth, but thinking of the ocean as this place, this deep, dark, mysterious place that houses fearsome, unknown creatures.
Mhm.
There's some scary stuff living out there in the depths of the ocean that we don't get to see. And those monsters seem to be very, very otherworldly in that way, Hecatean.
Yeah.
And
The depths of the
mm,
ocean are one of the few places on Earth that we don't really know about. There's things down there that we still don't know. We feel like we've, mapped and explored every corner of the Earth, but there's deep parts of the ocean that we don't even know what's down there. And I love that. I love that that still exists. And there's still these sort of unknown monsters in the deep.
still some mystery.
Yeah.
And yet you had mentioned the more familial connections to, or rather the liminal connections of the beach as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I was thinking about, what you just said about our relationship with the ocean. And we love the ocean. It's where we go on vacation. It's where, if you want to relax, you go to the sea. If you want to, it's associated with relaxation, with having a good time, with, getting away from it all. We go to the sea. We love the sea. Um, we love swimming in the sea, and it's dangerous. It's one of those things we do that is dangerous. People drown all the time. People get attacked by sharks. We had a couple of weeks ago, we had those billionaires whose yacht sank, and all their billions couldn't save them from the sea. We have all these stories like the Titanic, of people who ought to be the most privileged people on earth, but the sea doesn't care. you know
Hmm.
the sea will take you. um and yet
The great
we can't.
hungry mother.
Yeah, exactly, but we can't stay away. We love it. I love the sea. I love going to the beach. I love,
Mhm.
like, I remember actually once as a kid, this was down in Florida. I was at the beach with my family, and um I loved swimming in the ocean. And I remember this day because it was a beautiful, just, warm Florida day, and the ocean just felt perfect. And I just wanted to swim out as far as I could. I just wanted
Mm.
to keep going. And I got caught in a riptide, and my dad had to swim out and rescue me. Like, I could have died. I literally could have died. But I was just having a good time, right? I was having a great time. I just was like, my dad showed up. He's like dragging me back to shore. I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, do you realize how far you are? How far out you went? Uh, but like, it just felt so good. And
Mm.
even though it's not safe, and there's a lot of that in Hecate, because Hecate represents a lot of things that aren't safe, right? A lot of things that are dangerous, and yet she's also this wonderful, nurturing, protective presence, and that to me feels very oceanic.
Mm. That great eldritch power of it's doing its own thing, and
Yes,
you're not safe because it could very easily eat you. But at the same time, there's deep healing and there's deep caring, and it is all these things, and
yes,
yet none of these things. It's just
yes,
its own thing, and it's bigger than humanity and outside of humanity. It's we're visiting it. We don't control it. We have to figure out how to work around it. It is not working around us.
yes, yes.
Yeah, that's I did I tell you about that time that went out to the ocean and maybe not. I'll tell you anyways because we're on the podcast. I gosh, so I think it was this summer. Josh and I went to the ocean looking for a little bit of downtime. And of course, I brought my mama. I have a mala that I use for a Hecatean chant a mantra that I do every day. That's related to one of the practices that Robin and I share. And I went out to the ocean, Josh was kind of sitting back, reading a book in the shade, just relaxing. And I go out to the ocean. And so I get my feet in there. I'm standing maybe, ankle deep, a little deeper than that. And I start singing my mantra to the ocean. And there's not a lot of people around, so nobody's going to be looking at me weird. And if anybody saw me from afar, it was just some weird guy and his weird bony necklace thing standing in the water. And I'm sure they've seen weirder. I finish up my mantra and I look in front of me, and all of a sudden, this horseshoe crab is swimming up to me. And I'd never really seen a horseshoe crab, at least this far. I've seen them, their shells this far north, but I'd never seen them in the water.
Mm.
And it was the weirdest thing because he was just swimming right up to me to the point where I reached in and picked him up. And there he was, all pincers out and legs out. And of course, I had to show Josh before I brought him back to the ocean. But it was, again, as with a lot of weird magical stuff, you could easily look at it and be like, well, okay, a crab just happened to be swimming in the direction you were at and just happened to do it right after you were done with your mantra set. That doesn't mean anything. But in that moment, it felt like a little, not even gift, just a little bit of I see you, you see me kind of moment
Mhm.
between me
Acknowledgement.
and the
Yeah.
ancient deaths, especially with the horseshoe crab, who, I mean, they're old, as I understand, they're one of the few the
Yeah.
few creatures that have copper based blood.
Yeah.
They don't bleed red
So
like us.
they're so eldritch, you know?
Yes, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's so old that their their composition is different than
Yeah.
most of
They're
the rest
alien.
of their
Yeah.
blood is literally different. And it is not the same as most land animals, or heck, a lot of just like a lot of ocean life. It's just different. It's weird, and it's eldritch and old, and so there was a little bit of I see you, you see me,
Yeah.
which is always a nice feeling, and little a reminder that the world is a cool and magical place. But
Yes, absolutely.
yeah, that was my weird Einalian moment, because I was going out with the purpose of connecting to Hekate in her relationship to the sea.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's wonderful. And I think that most people who are sort of a magical inclination who go to the sea probably have similar stories. I think
Mhm.
it's a place where these kinds of things happen. And um, there's a reason why it's always really tempting to do magic on the beach, you know,
Mhm.
on that verge, you know? And yeah, I think witches, magical people who go to the ocean have these kinds of experiences all the time because you can feel it there. You can feel you're in that liminal space, right? The beach is a liminal space. It's between the sea and the land. Um, and it's a great place to go to enter into that liminality and have those kinds of experiences.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So that was, I don't know. There's a lot of, I think generally when it comes to magical practices, and I guess this is veering a little bit of off from Hecatean magic, but if you show up in good faith, making and bring like usually bringing offerings and kind of showing up and showing that you're showing up to do the work,
Mhm.
and be bringing forth honor and gratitude.
Yes.
Usually, usually nature responds in kind in some kind of magic,
Yes.
and and that is very, and going back to Hecate, her being the soul of the world, the thing that connects everything.
Mhm.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
Do you have any other deep Einalian wisdom that you want to, or observations or thought processes you want to
Well,
explore?
no, I feel like This is one of those things where, as we said, there's not a huge amount of ancient lore directly connected to Hekate Einalia, except for, her association with that whole realm. But I think as kind of modern people, there's a really rich vein of practice to tap there. Not just with the sea, but I also think with water in general, bodies of water.
Mm,
I mean,
yeah.
not everybody lives near the coast, but you can definitely feel that liminal energy. Lake Champlain in Vermont, is not the sea, but you can, if you're on the shore there, you can feel that. You can feel the power of the depths.
Mhm.
The city in Philadelphia, where Philadelphia has two major rivers, we're between two rivers, the Delaware and the Schuylkill, who both have their own personality and their own spirit. And I've done a lot of work with both rivers because I've lived here a long time. And there's a lot of power in working with these waterways. Um, and maybe it's because you and I are Cancerians or water signs, we connect really deeply with that. But I think it's a really fruitful path for magic, for working with Hecate, to go to the
Mhm.
water, be near the water, and to connect with these bodies of water, because they're very alive, and there's always a
Oh
lot
my
going on.
gosh.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just saying, you just seem talking about rivers. I live on the Connecticut River, which if you're not familiar with northeastern New England, it separates New Hampshire and Vermont. It is the border of New Hampshire and Vermont, and it flows all the way down to Connecticut, as the name implies, and then out to the ocean. And I've done a lot of magical work with that river. And river spirits are really interesting
Yes.
and very Hecatean in their own kind of way. She
Yes.
was when I was doing this deep work with her and kind of working with her in vision, and I kind of got this visionary image of the spirit of that river. And man, she was not, it wasn't all like, it wasn't warm and fuzzy.
Hmm.
I believe that the vision involved a lot of bones, and she came off as really intense, and uh had some words to me about her relationship with humanity. And
Hmm.
I'm putting it lightly and keeping it, to work, I guess, a little personal, but words are intense.
Yeah.
And
Yes. The Connecticut River is especially intense, I think.
and it's really interesting to try to look at that in the way, the lens of Hecatean magic,
Yeah.
as working with Hekate as the in-between,
Yeah.
between you and the river, but also, oh my gosh, with the Connecticut River being a border, it is an in-between river.
It is. Yeah. And the rivers I just mentioned in Philadelphia are both, they're like roads in and of themselves. I mean, the Delaware River is navigable by huge ships. It's its own kind of road. It's a huge river. And then the Schuylkill is much smaller, but it's also, it's a pathway. It's a pathway inland. It goes, all the way up into central Pennsylvania. And it's where, I mean, just yesterday I was out for a run, like I mentioned to you. I was out for a run, and there's a lovely multi-use trail that runs right along the Schuylkill River. Um, runs for about, well, it runs a really long way. It runs for at least 25 miles along the river. Beautiful spot. Great place to go when you live in the city, to go, have some nice nature time. And yesterday was a Sunday. It was a nice day, and that trail was packed. Everybody wanted to be near the water. Everybody wanted to be by the river, because it was just such a glorious day. And what do you do on a beautiful day? You go near the water, right? I mean, we have this river trail. It's gorgeous, and the city has spent, millions of dollars on this thing and maintains it and keeps it beautiful, because it matters. It really matters to people to have access to the water. We have the other river, the Delaware, which I mentioned is a huge river. There was a big mistake made in city planning in this city about 40 years ago when they built I-95, because they built it along the Delaware, which kind of cuts off the city from the river. It's really hard to get to the river from the city. You've got to cross. Yeah. So they're building right now, they're building a cap over the highway. They're building a cap over 95. They're going to park on top of it so that you can walk to the river from town
Oh, wow,
without
cool.
having to, like, negotiate traffic or anything like that, or go to one of the specific pedestrian bridges. They're building a cap over it. It's like going to be a couple blocks long. It's going to be a big park. I'm really looking forward to it, but it matters, right? I mean, that's a huge
Yeah.
project. Again, millions of dollars out of the budget, but it's worth it, right? Because that's what makes it worth living, is having access to water. We want to be near the water. We love being near the water.
That's a really interesting idea. Just thinking, so I'm thinking about rivers, especially up here,
Mhm.
and applicable there, and then the Delaware having its own historical, the Delaware
Yeah.
River also being big with history that gives it like an extra zhuzh, an extra power. Uh, but for the Connecticut up here, I live in mountain land. All
Yeah.
these
Yeah.
rolling mountains, and the Connecticut River was a road of its own. It's how you would
Mhm.
get from one point to another, and a lot of rivers served that point, especially back
Yeah.
when we were far more forested, and there was not a lot of roads. You would have a kayak or a canoe. That's how
Yeah.
you would get. That's how you get from easily from point A to point B.
Yes.
Rivers were their own kind of roads, which makes them a little extra Hecatean, which is a really interesting thing. Huh.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah.
When it comes to magic and the ocean, I think that I'm not going to get too technical, at least on my end. You
Mhm.
can, if you have a really cool idea to walk people through it. But I think that water itself is so magical in its action, in using it to you know, release releasing releasing something from your life, burning something and then releasing it. Ooh, that's if you putting something you want to release through the three realms of Hekate, through the ocean, through the air, and through the land. There's something there that it's kind of dinging at the back of my mind. But I have two more episodes to quantify it, so that's okay.
We love building
But
fires on the beach. It's one of the things you do when you go to the beach.
oh
You
my
build a
gosh.
fire. Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, working with fire magically is one of my favorite things, because
Mm.
fire, I've had a lot of these moments of gnosis working with fire magically, especially in a Hecatean way, using her as both this fire as this light and transformation. We have a bunch of epithets eventually coming up that relate more to fire, to burning, not just torches, but fire in general. And it being also this center of ceremony,
Mhm.
this transmuter. There's so many different Hecatean things with fire, and to build a fire in a liminal spot of being on the ocean is next level, right?
It is.
That's
Yep.
next level
Absolutely.
Hecatean magic right there. Burning something and then I'm trying to figure out how to like word it and also not encourage littering. Uh, because remember, anything that you release to nature needs to be something that can break down and not be gross. That's why we bury things from time to time, because it's nice just to put it in the ground and let it rot. But there's there's a lot of magic with the ocean, even drawing symbols for the ocean to lap up with the waves as the tide comes in, drawing symbols in the sand, both
Mhm.
as a way to show gratitude or just create some magic and release it to the ocean. These are all kind of simple magical things. What do you think? You have any special oceanic magic that you want to share with our listeners?
Well, I'm actually loving the idea that you're talking about of the offering of the little boats, sending things out that way. Of course, as you said, you'd want something biodegradable, but
Mm.
to make, a little boat out of sticks or paper or something and put an offering in it and send it off seems like a really lovely thing to do. Um, I have done, things like that before, and it
Mhm.
tends to be really effective. If I lived near the ocean, which I never have, and I always kind of hoped that one of these days I'd get a place near the ocean just so I could enter into a deeper relationship with it. But if I lived near the ocean, I would be making offerings to the ocean every day, because I feel like that would be a really amazing magical relationship to nurture.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I have my family had my dad's side of the family comes from the Long Island Sound area when they came to the States. And so there's this ancestral connection to the ocean for me that
Mm.
adds another level to it. I love working with the ocean. I don't have any structured magic around it that I can think of. That's why I'm kind of
Mhm.
struggling because a lot of my stuff is very when I'm working with the ocean, it depends on what I'm trying to do. And oftentimes it's just making offerings and saying thank
Yeah,
you. And it
yeah.
might be some flowers to the ocean or offering mix that I've brought from different things that I've collected, and then singing to the ocean, which sounds very hippy dippy, but sing to water. You know what?
Singing
Just
to
go and
water is
sing to water
powerful. Yeah,
sometime for about 5 minutes and get back
yeah.
to me about how you feel. I don't care. There's magic there.
Yes,
Water responds to that. The
yes.
water responds to air, to singing, to words, and
Mhm.
I don't know how to singing especially, and I don't know how to better quantify that or explain that. That's just Isaac's an ask for opinion right there. But there's a little extra magic there, and
Mhm.
working with the ocean is this one. I mean, also just it having all this salt in it. The salt is wonderful. It's just kind of pulling energetic dunk off of things.
Mhm.
So bathing in the ocean is cleansing. So
Yeah.
working with the ocean to release and cleanse is amazing. And doing it in a Hecatean way will connect you a little deeper to the unknown and to the potentially the scarier parts of the ocean, but you know, if you're doing it in a way that you just want to understand the universe, it's all right.
Mhm.
you you're going in with some Hecate backup, you'll be fine. Uh, but
That's part of,
anyway,
doing Hecatean work is you're creating a relationship with the scarier parts of the universe, nurturing that
right.
relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So make some friends with the scary things of the deep, and hopefully, your friendship will at least make them reconsider a situation where they come out where they find a chance to eat you. Uh, but anyway, so I know that was so open-ended, and I had a hard time with this episode because my relationship with the ocean. Uh, I've been working with the ocean longer than I've consciously been working with Hekate. So trying to talk about their relationship while it's still there, it's like it's something I'm still learning about. And I think it sounds like most of us are still learning about as it's not really well put into words
Hmm.
historically either.
Yeah.
But next episode, I'm thinking we should tackle Iranian,
Yeah, we can do it
and
again next.
that'll be a little easier too, because
Yeah.
I can think of so many Iranian things. I'm like, oh yeah, well, we can get into that. That's easy. Iranian and Chthonian will be easy, but this one was a little more mysterious, which is apropos.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a whole bunch of traditions that one last thing that just came to me. There's a whole bunch of traditions that view the ocean as a connection to the underworld
Yes.
and to dreaming
Yes.
and all of that. So, and of course, there's this connection between the ocean and the moon,
Yes.
which is all points we didn't explore there, but we could have because that's with Hecate's traditional conflation with Artemis and connection to the moon and Selene and there's a lot there too, I guess. And then unknown and sleep. There's a lot of connection to her and sleep. We even talked a little bit about that with Brizo having being an origin of hysteria, but oh gosh, what is one of the three? Gosh, there's one that Nabata Solareth. I was trying to Actio
Mhm.
Fis, Ereshkigal,
Yeah.
Nabata Solareth, the three secret names of Hekate. I'm waving my hands because it's in the PGM, and because it's in the PGM, it makes it not so secret, but it's the secret names of Hekate. And Nabata Solareth is Disturber of Dreams.
Hmm.
So that is a roundabout way to getting to the ocean, but
Yeah.
we'll get into that more when we're looking at her in more dreamy aspects.
Yeah.
But well, thank you everybody for listening. You can always reach out to us at our Facebook or our Instagram, Epithets the Podcast. And we'd love to hear from you. And we'd love to hear about any thoughts or explorations you've had concerning any of these epithets. If you have ideas about Einalia and you think, my gosh, why didn't you guys go there? Reach out to us and let us know. And if we get enough, maybe we'll get another we'll slide in another oceanic epithet here and dig into that a little bit or do it Einalia too. But anyway, thank you everybody for listening. And we look forward to talking about Hekate again in 2 weeks. Until then, have a wonderful whatever point of the day you're at. Bye.